Hello everyone and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah here. It's good to be back after a long Pesach break, but now that we are back, we're behind. We have lost some time on the Dirshu schedule, so I'm going to try to make up for it. I'm going to try as best as I can to do 2 pages a day for the next several days to try and catch up. Let's see if we can do it. So we're going to pick up today on the bottom of Mem Hey Amud Aleph. We're, of course, in Mishnah Berurah Chelik Vav, so that's Mem Hey Amud Aleph and Chelik Vav. We are continuing to learn Hilchas Tainus. We pick up today in Siman Tavkov Sameches, Siman Sif Tes, bottom of Mem Hey Amud Aleph in the Shulchan Aruch. Says the Mechaber, Im Ira Yoim Misas Aviv B'Shabbos or Oiborosh Chodesh. If somebody has the minhag to fast when he has yahrzeit for a parent, and the yahrzeit falls out on Shabbos or on Rosh Chodesh, Yidche Lamachar, he should push off the tainus to the following day. Says the Ramah, Hagav ein noyagin kain, that is not our minhag, Ella ein misanin klal. Rather, our minhag is that if the yahrzeit is Rosh Chodesh or the yahrzeit falls out on Shabbos, then we do not fast at all. And the same halacha would apply to a yahrzeit that falls out on any day that we do not recite Tachdon because it's a shtikal Yom Tov, like today is Isru Chag of Pesach, it's also Chodesh Nisan, so we wouldn't say Tachdon. If the yahrzeit falls out, we would not fast. It says the Mishnah Berurah, in Ois Kat Memhei, Ein Misanin Klal, we don't fast at all. Aval, however, Lahadlik Ner, to light a yahrzeit licht, v'loimer kaddish, and to say kaddish yasam on the yahrzeit, yiyeh be'oisa yoim, that you would be noyeg on the day of the yahrzeit. So if somebody has yahrzeit or Rosh Chodesh, he doesn't fast, but he still lights a yahrzeit licht, and he still says kaddish. So too if it falls out on Rosh Chodesh. The same halacha holds true on any other day when we do not say tachdon. For hu adinim hu bal habris ein sarach lehisanois. The same halacha applies to a father who has a son, it's the 8th day of his baby's life. It's time for the bris milah. If his yahrzeit falls out on the day when he has to make a bris milah, he does not fast. The Yom Tov shaloihu, because that day, the day when he's giving his son a bris, is considered a Yom Tov. If he desires, Yis'ane rak ad mincha gedola, he could fast until mincha gedola, and then daven mincha at mincha gedola, and then break his fast. Tov lehisanis yom shemes by Rabbi Muvak. Chavetz Chaim brings down over here, it is a good practice to fast on the day of the yahrzeit of your Rebbe Muvak, the Rebbe that you learnt most of your Torah knowledge and your Chachma from. That's your Rebbe Muvak. It would be good to fast on the day of the yahrzeit of your Rebbe Muvak, because you are obligated to honor your Rebbe Muvak, Yoiser Mikvaid Aviv. Excuse me. Even more than you are obligated to honor your parent, your father. And the Gemara says that's because your father brings you Lidei Olam Hazeh. Your father establishes you in this world, while your Rebbe, he teaches you Torah, so he establishes you for the next world. He's Mevian La'olam Haba, he brings you to Olam Haba. It's very interesting. My Rebbe, Berurah, always says on that, what does that mean? That the father brings his child to Olam Hazeh, while the Rebbe brings him to Olam Haba. A father very often learns with his son, and even if he doesn't learn with his son, he enrolls his son in yeshiva, he finds him a Rebbe, he pays tuition. So how is it that we say that the father only brings the child to Olam Hazeh while the Rebbe brings the child to Olam Haba? And he answers that both the father and the Rebbe either teach the child Torah or they facilitate his learning Torah. But the two Torahs are not the same. What he always says is the job of a father is to teach his son the Torah of Olam Hazeh. What does that mean? Learning Torah is geschmack. In Olam Hazeh, learning Torah is geschmack. Look at a balabas in the Bismedrish after a hard day's work, and he's sitting with a chavrusa, and they learn a geschmack of Taisvis. They finish a daf and daf Yomi. They finish a page in Dirshu ba'alacha, and there's a geschmack. So learning Torah is geschmack in Olam Hazeh, and leading a life of Torah is geschmack in Olam Hazeh. The job of a father is to show his son the geschmack of Torah. That way he'll always want to learn Torah. The job of the Rebbe is the Torah of Olam Haba. The job of the Rebbe is to push the Talmud, to push him so that he should fulfill his potential in Torah. The job of the Rebbe is to make the child come to Olam Haba, to be mamala his tafkid in Torah. And sometimes in order to do that, you have to push him, you have to tell him things he doesn't want to hear. So the Rebbe's Torah is a Torah of Olam Haba. Okay, now we go to Sif Yud, top line, Mem Hamid Beis. Says the Mechaber, Ha-noider leilech al kivrei tzadikim shebamakim pliny. This is a very fascinating sif to me. The Mechaber says, if somebody undertakes a neder, he makes a neder that he will go visit the grave site of a tzaddik in a certain place. V'nisakev yomim rabim. And then he's unable to fulfill the neder. He can't go traveling for several days, for a while. So he made this neder. Making a neder, he says, he's making a neder to go to the Rizal's kever. That's not so easy. He lives in New York. He's got to get to Eretz Yisrael. A week goes by, a month goes by, 6 months goes by. He hasn't been able to be Mekayim the neder. V'achar kach era, and then it just so happens, shehiskiru l'alechesham, that somebody hires him to go to the kever. So somebody comes over to this yid who made a neder to go to the Arizal's kever and says, look, I know you studied the history of the Arizal. I want to hire you to take me on a trip, to take me to the Arizal's kever. I'll pay your ticket and I'll give you $5,000. So now he got hired to go to the Arizal's kever. So he's going to go. Is he Mekayim his neder by going? You see, he's not really going in order to be Mekayim his neder. The reason he's going now is because he wants to make $5,000. So he's not going to be Mekayim his neder. Is he Mekayim the neder anyway? So says the Mechaber, Dai b'halichazu. It is sufficient for him to go under the terms of his contract and make the $5,000, and by doing so, he is Mekayim his neder, even though he's not doing it, strictly speaking, to be Mekayim the neder. Okay, that's the halacha here of Sif Yud. Now, there's a couple of fascinating things. One is that this Sif does not seem to have any place in Hilchas Tainus. What does this have to do with Hilchas Tainus? This is a halach in Hilchas Nedarim. It should be in Yeridea. It shouldn't be over here in Arachaim. And I think the answer to that is going to become apparent when we learn the next Sif. Another interesting thing, it comes out from this Sif, I think, over here, that going to visit the kever of a tzaddik is a mitzvah. There's a distinct mitzvah in going to visit the kever of a tzaddik. Because if not, the neder wouldn't be chal. When somebody just makes a verbal kabbalah to go do something, the neder is not chal unless it's a dvar mitzvah. So it would seem that this is a dvar mitzvah to go to the kever of the tzaddik. Okay. In other words, it's not just a nice thing. It's a mitzvah. Okay. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ois Kat Mem Zayin. Dai b'halichazu. It's sufficient for him to go and get paid. He doesn't have to make a special trip to be Mekayim his neder. Says the Chavetz Chaim, Shaharei lo nadar ela leilech. His neder was that he's going to go. The kiyam hadavar. And he went. So he was Mekayim the terms of his neder. Aval, however, and this is again where you see that there's a mitzvah involved here. Aval, im nadar lahoitzi asara zehuvim b'halichazu. Let's say the guy made a neder and he said, I'm going to spend 10 golden coins in order to go to the kever. Or to put it in terms that are more relatable to us, I'm going to buy a $1,500 ticket on El Al to go visit the Arizal's kever. So even though the round trip is going to cost me $1,500, the guy says, I'm going to spend $1,500 to go to the Arizal's kever. In that case, says the Chavetz Chaim, then somebody goes ahead and gives him free tickets and pays him $5,000 to do it. Now he wasn't Mekayim the terms of his neder. The terms of his neder were that he's going to spend money on being Mekayim this mitzvah. Now he's being Mekayim the mitzvah without spending any money. So he wasn't Mekayim the terms of his neder. So he has to go again and he has to spend money to do it. Now there is an interesting Sharet Zion over here. Sharet Zion is cut mem zayin. The Chavetz Chaim says, "Ve'efsher de'im yoitzi ha'asara zuhuvim litstaka." Says the Chavetz Chaim, it could be that if he says, all right, listen, I said I was going to spend $1,500 to go to the Rizal's kever, Now I got the trip for free and I made $5,000. So you know what? The $1,500 I'm going to give to tzedakah. Says the Chavetz Chaim, it could be he's using the $1,500 for the mitzvah of tzedakah. It could be that he could be mekayim his neder that way. Now we go to Sif Yud Aleph, and in Sif Yud Aleph, I think we'll see why the halacha of Sif Yud was placed over in here in Hilchas Tainus and not in Yoreh De'ah. It is in Yoreh De'ah as well. This halacha is in Hilchas Tedarim in Yoreh De'ah. But the question is, why is it here? And by the way, it's based on the tshuva, on a tshuvas Maharil. This is based on a shaila that was written to the Maharil. Somebody wrote such a shaila. He said, I made such a neder, and I wasn't mekayim it yet, and now somebody wants to hire me to go to the kever. Am I yoitza my neder? Am I mekayim my neder by going? Says the Mechaber in Sif Yud Aleph, 3 lines down. Hanoider lotzum schum yamim ritzufim. If somebody makes a neder to fast, excuse me, seasonal allergies. If somebody makes a neder to fast a certain amount of days in a row, so somebody goes in and he makes a tainus, I'm going to fast, he makes a neder, Kabbalah's tainus, that he's going to fast for 30 days. And then he looks on the calendar, and guess what? One of those days is Asar B'Teves. So now there's a tainus chayva. There's a tainus that he's obligated to fast that falls out on one of those 30 days. Somebody made a neder to fast a certain amount of days in a row. And in the midst of those days, there's a tainus chayva. That day of the tainus chayva counts for the 30. So in other words, the question that the Mechaber is addressing is like this. Like I said, somebody went ahead, he made a neder, he's going to fast for 30 days straight. Then he takes out a calendar and he looks and he says, I wonder what happens during those 30 days. And he sees Asar B'Teves. So now he has a shaila. He says, wait a second. I said I'm going to fast for 30 days straight. So it sounds like I was makabel on myself 30 days of tainus. But one of the days I was going to fast anyway because it's Asar B'Teves. So does that count to my 30 days? Or do I have to add on another day and fast another day? Says the Mechaber, no, the day of Asar B'Teves does count. And says the Mishnah Berurah, in Ois Kat Memches, Ve'era behem tainus chayva, one of the days of the 30 days happens to be a tainus chayva. Va'afilu be'eshe nadar, loy amar elu hayomim. What the Chavetz Chaim is saying is like this. If the person would have made a neder, and he would have said, I am going to fast on the following 30 days. And he specifies the 30 days. I'm going to fast the 30 days from Rosh Chodesh Shvat until Rosh Chodesh Adar. Well, that wouldn't be 30. Until Beis Adar or Gimel Adar, whatever the case is. I'm going to fast those 30 days. Now, if he said that, and Asar B'Teves is one of those days, then we have no question that he wouldn't have to add on another day. Because he delineated, he specified the days that he's going to fast. So, all right, if one of those days is a tainus chayva, he doesn't have to make it up by adding on another day. He can't possibly make it up by adding on another day. He specified these days. Adding on another day in middle of Adar is not going to help for this neder at all. So in that case, it's obvious that he doesn't have to add on another day. The question is, that's not what the guy did. The guy said, I'm going to fast 30 days in a row. I'm starting tomorrow. He didn't delineate the days. Then he realized that Asar B'Teves falls out in middle of that time period. That's the shaila that the Mechaber was addressing, and the Mechaber said you don't have to add on another day. El Amar Stam, Shemakabel Alav Lotza Me'ayoyim Arba'am Yom Ritzufim. The case of the Chavetz Chaim, the guy said, I'm going to start fasting today, I'm fasting 40 days in a row. But he didn't specify these 40 days. I'm fasting 40 days in a row, and Asar B'Teves fell out, or Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, or Tisha B'Av, fell out during one of those, during that time period. So the Mechaber said he doesn't have to add on another day. That day, Asar B'Teves, Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, Tisha B'Av, it counts to the 30 days. Oilid loy, says the Mishnah Berurah Kat Memtes. V'dafka b'tainus chayva shehu shalai al yedei neder. Says the Chavetz Chaim, what kind of tainus chayva are we talking about here? We're talking about a tainus chayva, an obligatory tainus like Asar B'Tevis, like Shiva Asar B'Tamuz, like Tisha B'Av, but not a tainus that he was makabel on himself as a neder. For example, says the Chavetz Chaim, Aval, however, Imahaya alav chayiv al yidei neder. Let's say he was obligated to fast one of the days in that time period based on a neder that he made. Kigoyin, for example, shenadar lotzum b'sheni v'chamishi. Let's say this person made a neder that for the rest of the year, he's fasting every Monday and Thursday. He's fasting bahab for the rest of the year. Now he makes a neder, I'm fasting for the next 40 days straight. Well, in the next 40 days straight, there are a bunch of Mondays and Thursdays. Why is he fasting those Mondays and Thursdays? Not because they're a tainus chayva like Shiva Asar B'Tamuz or Asar B'Tevis. He's fasting those Mondays and Thursdays because of a neder, an optional neder that he undertook. So now, what's happening over here? He made one neder that requires him to fast every Monday and Thursday. Now he made a second neder saying, I'm going to fast the next 40 days straight. Now, in those 40 days, there are Mondays and Thursdays that he's obligated to fast because of his first neder. So wait a second. So when he said, I'm going to fast 40 days straight, what did he mean? He meant to include the Mondays and Thursdays, but he already knew that he was fasting those Mondays and Thursdays. So what did he add on when he said 40 days? He didn't really mean 40 days because he wasn't adding on 40 days. You have to minus out from the 40 days the Mondays and Thursdays that he was already going to fast. So he really only meant 30 days. So why didn't he say 30 days? He said 40. Oh, if you said 40, knowing full well that some of those days you were already obligated to fast because of your own personal neder, so then you got to add on days to add up to the 40. Let's see it in the Mishnah Berurah. The Mishnah Berurah says, "V'dafka b'tainis kleva shelo al yidei neder." This halacha of the mechaber, that you don't have to add on a day to cover for Asar B'Tevis or Shiva Asar B'Tamuz or Tisha B'Av, that's only because those are obligatory tanesim that you're obligated to fast based on halacha, based on the Yiddish calendar, not based on your own personal obligation. But if you undertook a neder to fast some of those days that are now in the 40-day period that you just made a neder to fast, so you made it one neder that requires you to fast every Monday and Thursday. And then you added on and you said, I'm going to fast for the next 40 days straight. Then the Mondays and Thursdays don't count towards your 40-day count. Because you have to fast those anyway. You already made one neder that requires you to fast those days. And you knew that when you made the second neder. So when you made the second neder and you said 40 days, our assumption is that you weren't including the Mondays and Thursdays that you already had to fast because of a different neder. Unless the person will react to the Rav in surprise and he'll say, whoa, when I said I'm going to fast 40 days straight, it was only because I knew I already have to fast the Mondays and the Thursdays. I certainly didn't mean to add on any extra tanesim. If the person will say that was his kavana when he made the second neder, then we trust him. When we call Makom, nevertheless, Misharagel Mikvar Lehisanes Aseris Yemei Tshuva. Now the Chavetz Chaim gives us a couple of interesting cases. Let's say somebody has the minig that he always fasts on Aseris Yemei Tshuva. Devagam Ken Ke'e Neder, which is also similar to a neder to fast. This person has a minig toiv that he's always noig, that he fasts every day of Aseris Yemei Tshuva. So that's like a neder. And now on the 15th day of Av, he goes in and he makes a neder, that he's going to fast for the next 40 days straight. In that case, now, in those 40 days, you have the Aseres Yemei Tshuva. In that case, says the Chavetz Chaim, in that case, the 10 days of Aseres Yemei Tshuva that he always fasts does count to the total of 40 that he was makabel on himself with the second neder. Why? The vaday kavanasoi neged arbaim yoim shalom Moshe bahar k'moshe kasav siftalit. Because if somebody makes a neder on the 15th day of Av that he's going to fast for the next 40 days straight, that's different than somebody who wakes up on Rosh Chodesh Tevis and says he's going to fast 40 days straight. Somebody who makes such a statement, such a neder on Rosh Chodesh Tevis, listen, you said 40, you meant 40. But when somebody says that on the 15th day of Av, we know what he means. The reason he's making a neder to fast 40 days straight is because he wants to fast keneged the 40 days that Moshe Rabbeinu went up on Har Sinai and went up to Shemayim to be mispal for Klal Yisrael after the Chet of the Egel. So we know that he means these 40 days specifically. And since he means these 40 days specifically, so then even though in those 40 days are the 10 days of Aseret Yimei Tshuva that he would have fasted anyways, it doesn't matter. He's covered. That's considered part of the 40. Because now it's like the case that I mentioned earlier, where somebody delineates a specific 40 days. Somebody says, I am going to fast these specific 40 days. Then, even if there's another tinus in middle, so certainly he doesn't have to make it up. Now another case. Again, somebody who has the minhag to fast Aseret Yimei Tshuva. And now he has yahrzeit for his father during Aseret Yimei Tshuva, during the time between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. So now the shaila is, he always had the minhag to fast the 10 days of Aseret Yimei Tshuva. Now it turns out that one of those days he's going to fast anyway for the yahrzeit. Does he have to add on a day to make up for the day of the yahrzeit? Says the Chavetz Chaim, no. Ein tzarich lahisef lehisanis chamishi yamim lifnei Rosh Hashanah. He doesn't have to add on a 5th day before Rosh Hashanah. What's the Chavetz Chaim talking about here when he says a 5th day? Somebody, we spoke about this earlier, somebody who has the minhag to fast for the entirety of Aseret Yimei Tshuva has to add on 4 days before Rosh Hashanah. Why? Because there are 4 days of Aseret Yimei Tshuva that you cannot fast. You have 2 days of Rosh Hashanah. There's always a Shabbos in Aseret Yimei Tshuva. Shabbos Shuvah you can't fast. And Erev Yom Kippur you can't fast. So somebody who wants to fast for Aseret Yimei Tshuva has to make up those 4 days before Rosh Hashanah. Now this fellow fasts Aseret Yimei Tshuva, but now he lost his father, and the yahrzeit falls out in Aseret Yimei Tshuva. So does he have to add on a 5th day before Rosh Hashanah to make up for the day of the yahrzeit, where he's not fasting for Aseret Yimei Tshuva, he's fasting for the yahrzeit? Says the Chavetz Chaim, no. Ein tzarich lahisef lehisanis chamishi yamim lifnei Rosh Hashanah. Why? Midi dahavi atzayim gedali v'yom kippurim sheim chayav va'olam b'saycha asar yamim. Because in Aseret Yimei Tshuva, besides the 4 days that you cannot fast, there are 2 days that you must fast. You have Tzom Gedalia, which is a Tainus Tzibur, a Tainus Chayva that you have to fast, and you have Yom Kippur, where obviously you have to fast. And we don't say that somebody who has the minhag to fast for Aseret Yimei Tshuva has to make up fasts to cover for Tzom Gedalia and Yom Kippur. So the same way he doesn't have to make up for Tzom Gedalia and Yom Kippur, he also doesn't have to make up for the day of his yahrzeit. V'im yom shemeis aviv hu lifnei Rosh Hashanah b'mei aslichas. Let's say he has yahrzeit before Rosh Hashanah, during the days when we say slichas. Tzarich lehisaneis arba yamim chutz miyom hahu. We said that somebody who has the minhag to fast for Aseret Yimei Tshuva has to add on 4 tanesim before Rosh Hashanah. Now he has yahrzeit on one of those days before Rosh Hashanah. He has to fast 4 days besides the yahrzeit. The yahrzeit does not count as one of the makeup days. But if his yahrzeit falls out either on the first day of Slichas or on Erev Rosh Hashanah, he doesn't have to replace that day. The first day of Slichas and Erev Rosh Hashanah are always present during the time that we would usually make up the 4 days before Rosh Hashanah. So in other words, Erev Rosh Hashanah always counts as one of those 4 makeup days. So since it always counts as one of those four makeup days, so also, even though now it's also a yard site, it also still counts as one of the makeup days. Siv Yud Beis, says the Mechaber, Kol Hasharoi B'Tainus, anyone who is keeping a fast day, anyone who's keeping a tainus, Bein Shahaya Misana Al Tzarasai, whether he's fasting because of a tzara, of a personal tzara that he's going through, Ayal Chaloimai, or maybe he's fasting a tainus Chaloim, Bein Shahaya Misana Im HaTzibur, or whether he's fasting a tainus Tzibur, where the Tzibur is fasting Al Tzarasam, because of a tzara that's affecting the entire Tzibur. Harezeh lo yinag idunin ba'atzmai, such a person should not comport himself in a luxurious manner during the fast day. In other words, he shouldn't say, okay, I'm fasting so I won't eat, but I could act in other luxurious ways. V'lo yokel roisha, he also should not be lightheaded. He shouldn't act in a joyous, happy way. V'lo yeh sameach v'toiv leiv, he shouldn't walk around in a great, good, upbeat mood. Ella rather doig, he should be worried. V'oinein, and he should be mourning. Ke'inyan shenema, like it says in the pasuk in Eicha, Mayis oinein adam chai gever al chatov. How much does a living person have to mourn and be worried over his averis? So if somebody is being noyeg a tainus is supposed to be a solemn, somber day. It's not supposed to be a joyous occasion. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ois Katan Nun Eladoig V'Oinein, and now the Chavetz Chaim says an interesting thing. V'yishmar atzmai min hakas. He should guard himself from anger. V'im yesh lo masa umatan, if he has to go to work, if he has to do business on that day, yaseh be'emuna u'benachas, he should do his business with emuna and in a calm manner, shelo yavai l'chlal kas, so that he shouldn't come to kas. I was trying to figure out where this comes from. There's no Shar Tzion over here, so the Mishnah Berurah doesn't say where he gets this from. I have a feeling that pshat is, when somebody fasts, he's very often in a bad mood. Somebody is hungry, he doesn't feel well, he's shvach, he feels stressed. So sometimes that could bring a person to kas. Chavetz Chaim is telling you, the Mechaber comes here and the Mechaber says that you should be in a somber mood. So now, it's a fast day, you're hungry, you're not feeling well, you're in a somber, worried mood. Now it's very easy, if somebody ticks you off the wrong way, it's very easy for you to get bekas on somebody and to react to somebody with anger. Now that obviously would be contrary to what we want to happen on a fast day. We don't want that a person has a tainus as a schus, and now he should get into unpleasant interactions. His ben adam l'chavero should turn out to be crummy, and so we're warning him, be careful on a fast day that you shouldn't come lidei kas. Okay, Mem Vav Amud Aleph, Siman Tavkov Samach Tes, Din Noider Be'es Tzara U'Boy Be'es Seifim, the halachas that pertain to somebody who makes a neder to fast because of a tzara, because of some kind of troubles. And we have over here 2 seifim. Says the Mechaber Sif Aleph. Yachid hamisane al tzara. A yachid takes on a tainus because of a tzara. Let's say a person has a loved one who's not well. So he wants to undertake a tainus as a schus that person should have a refuah shalema. So yachid hamisane al tzara, a yachid, an individual, is fasting because of a personal tzara. Va'avra, and now the tzara, Baruch Hashem, goes away. He gets a phone call that the loved one had a refuah shalema. Well, I shouldn't have used that example because that's the Mechaber's next example. Oyal chayla, he's fasting because of an ill person. V'nisrape, and Baruch Hashem, he has a refuah. Oy mace, or the flip side. Nebuch was fasting for a chayla. He was fasting on behalf of an ill person, and the person Nebuch passed away. In either of these cases, the reason for the person's fast is now gone. Somebody undertook a tainus as a schus, someone should have a refuah shalema, and he had a refuah. Okay, so the tzara is gone. Or even if Nebuch Layalenu the other way, the person passed away. Again, the need for the fast seems to be gone. He already passed on. So what's the point of the fast? Says the Mechaber, Tzarech lahashlim kol hatayni yoshe kibel olav. He still has to complete whatever tanesim he accepted upon himself. What does this mean? Like the Mishnah Berurah is going to say. So not only does he have to finish fasting on that day, let's say the person said, I'm going to fast 7 tanesim. He has to keep all 7 of those tanesim, even though the person had a refuah shalema or the person was nifter. still he has to fast all of those tanesim. Aval, that's the case by a yochid. Aval, however, tzibur shemisanin al shum davar, if the tzibur is fasting because of a tzara, v'nanu kaidem chatzos, and Baruch Hashem, their tefillos were answered. Let's say the tzibur was fasting for the well-being of a gadol. There's a gadol who wasn't well, so the tzibur was fasting. And now they get the good news that the gadol had a refuah shalema. V'nanu kaidem chatzos. They were answered, let's say, before chatzos of the day that they started fasting. Lo yashlimu. The Mechaber says they do not have to complete their tainus. However, if there are Talmidei Chachamim, or if most of the tzibur decides that they want to complete the tainus, then an individual is not allowed to separate himself from them. So if Rav the tzibur decides that they're completing the tainus anyway, so then the Yechidim have to do it as well. So so we saw over here in Sif Aleph a difference between an individual and a tzibur. An individual went ahead and he said, I'm being makabel on myself 7 tanesim. Now, why is he being makabel on himself 7 tanesim? Because he has a loved one, he has a family member who's not well. So he wants there to be a schus refuah shalema. So he says, I'm being makabel 7 tanesim. Now, the next day, the person has a refuah shalema, or Nebuch passes away. So halacha is, he has to keep all of those tanesim. He cannot say, there's no need for me to fast anymore. No, he has to be makabel, he has to be makayim all of the tanesim that he was makabel. However, the tzibur, if the tzibur undertook a tainus, and now the need for the tainus is obviated, now in what way was it obviated? So the Mechaber says, v'nanu, they were answered. So like I said, the tzibur was being mispal for that well-being of a gadol, and the gadol had a refuah shalema. Now, no more tainus, now the tainus is bottled by the tzibur. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ois Katan Aleph, Yachid Amisana. Hachilik bein tzibur liyachid. Why is there a halachic difference between the tzibur and an individual? Explains the Chavetz Chaim, the tzibur leiv bezdin masna aleim. The tzibur relies on the das, on the intent of bezdin, meaning the ones that were geyser the tainus on the tzibur. And when bezdin, or the chachamim, were geyser the tainus on the tzibur, it's very clear that they meant to be geyser the tainus in order, let's say in our case, so that the gadol should have a refuah. And the gadol had a refuah. So now there's taka no need to fast anymore. Because leiv bezdin masna alehen. Bezdin had that intent. And you are hanging on das bezdin. You could follow the das bezdin. That's one reason. And this, the Sharetzion brings this down from the Magid Mishnah. Now he gives another reason. V'gam de'ein matrichin ala tzibur. Another reason why we could be more makel when it comes to a tzibur is because we're not matriach the tzibur. By a yachid, when we're talking about an individual, so an individual, we could be matriach an individual. But a whole tzibur, we're not matriach a tzibur. So we're more prepared to be makel by a tzibur than by a yachid. Aval b'yachid, when it comes to an individual, says the Mishnah Berurah, kevin shalei hifta beferish shem tavar atzara lo yisana. Since when he undertook the tainus, he didn't say, I'm undertaking a tainus so that my relative should have a refuah, and if he has a refuah, I'm not going to fast anymore. He didn't say that. He just said, I'm undertaking 7 tanesim. So then he's got to fast. Then he has to fulfill all of the terms of his Kabbalah. If he said he's going to fast 7 days, he has to fast 7 days. Ice cotton bays. The Mechaber said that this is true whether the person had a refuah or if Nebuch died. So somebody undertook 7 tanesim for the well-being of his loved one, and then the next day the loved one died. He still has to complete his tanesim. The same halacha would apply to somebody who's fasting because of his own personal tzara. Somebody he's being oppressed by the courts. The courts are after him, and they said that they're going to lock him up for 5 years. So he wants to go ahead and fast so that this gzeira should be taken away. And then he gets the verdict, And no, he's got to go behind bars for 5 years. So that's similar to the person who fasted for the well-being of the loved one, and then the loved one died. In both of these cases, you have to be Mekayim your neder. You have to go ahead and fast. Oiskat and Gimel, Tzarech Lahashlim. You have to complete the terms of your Kabbalah. You have to complete the Tanesim. The Kevin Shekibel of Tanis Stam V'lo Hisna, because since you made a Stam Kabbalah's Tanis, and you didn't make a Tanai, you didn't make it conditional. You didn't say I'm going to fast if he doesn't have a refuah yet. Or you didn't say I'm going to fast, but I'm not going to fast anymore if he's cured or if he died. You didn't make that condition. You made an unconditional Kabbalah Satainus. Amrinan, so now we say an interesting thing. Amrinan, we say, that Daitai Haya a Kabbalah Zu. When the person made the Kabbalah, right? The person knows he has a loved one that's ill. So he gets up and he says, I'm being Makabal Tainus to fast 7 days. What does he want? Does he want that he's going to fast 7 days and the schus for the chayla should come after the tanesim? No. He wants that the schus for the chayla should come now, based on his Kabbalah, even though he didn't fast yet. Oh, if that's what he wants, so that means he wants full credit for those 7 tanesim now. So then he's not hinging it upon whether or not the guy is going to get better. You see, if his das would have been, I'm going to fast 7 days if I need 7 tanesim as a schus for him to get a refuah shalema. But if he gets a refuah shalema after 3 tanesim, then I should be off the hook for the final 4 tanesim. But that's not what this person wanted. I want to make a chashav, a Kabbalah now. And I want to get schar, I want to get the schus of that Kabbalah now. So then you're asking the Rabbeinu Shalom to give you the schus of a whole 7-day Kabbalah now. So okay, the Rabbeinu Shalom gave you the schus. Now you got to be Mekayim the terms of that Kabbalah that you already got credit for. Mitai shekibel of tainus ti amukubel tfilasa yispal al chayla valatzar. Ais kan dalit kol tiny shekibel. The Mechaber said he has to fulfill all the tanesim that he was makabel on himself. Hainu lav dafka oisa yoy mishum dehischel hisanois. This means not only that day. In other words, on Monday, the fellow said I'm being makabel 7 tanesim. The first day is going to be tomorrow on Tuesday. When the Mechaber says that he has to complete all the tanesim, it doesn't mean only that if he started to fast on Tuesday, he has to be Mashlim's Tuesday tainus. No, he has to be Mashlim Tuesday's tainus, and he has to be Mashlim the other 6 tanesim as well. Even if he accepted on himself many fast days, b'shvil oisay davar, because of this tzara, b'choyav la'ashlimam, he has to fulfill all of them. V'chein sha'arei nidreit, staka shekibel alav b'shvil sheyichki aplani. The same halacha would apply to somebody who makes a neder to give money to staka as a schus that a certain person should live. Afim base, even if the person dies, tzarech l'kayim, he has to give the gift to staka. V'ayim b'yaredei siman reishchav sif tefs vav b'haga the dafka b'shalei nada b'loshen t'nai. This is only if when you made the neder, you made it unconditional. Avalim Omar, but if you made a conditional neder and you said im yichya plini, if so and so will live, as ana, I'll fast, or I'll give so and so much money to tzedakah, umeis, and then the person dies, then then he's not obligated to fast or to give tzedakah, because in this case his neder was conditional. He hinged his neder on the person living, and the person died. If the tzibur is fasting because of a tzara, and their tefillos were answered, then the Mechaber said, then the tzibur no longer needs to fast. Says the Mishnah Berurah, mashma l'chayra, it would seem to be implied from the language of the Mechaber, that dafka nanu, that this halacha of the Mechaber, that the tzibur is different than the yachid, and the tzibur is not mechuyev to fulfill all of the tanesim, that only applies when the tefillos of the tzibur were answered. So again, there were geyser on the tzibur that they should fast, so that a gadol should have a refuah. Now the gadol had the refuah. Oh, the gadol had refuah, they don't have to fast anymore. Why? Because leiv bezdin masna. Okay, but let's say they fasted for the gadol, and while they were fasting for the gadol Nebuch Lo Aleinu died. In that case, it seems that they do have to complete the tanesim. Says the Mishnah Berurah, "Aval behisanu b'shvil chayla sheyisrapi umeis." If the tzibur is fasting as a schus for the well-being of a chayla, and then the chayla dies, then afilu tzibur chayavin lahashlim. Then it seems from the mechaber that even the tzibur would have to complete its tanesim. Av shemeis koyd b'chatzais, and that's true even if he passes away before chatzais, so that you didn't really start fasting yet. But v'yesh makilim b'tzibur af b'kahai gavna. But there are those who argue on this, and they makel by a tzibur, and they say that the tzibur could stop fasting even if the person died. Now, what's at play over here? I'll tell you what's at play. There's a machlekes rishonim why we are more makel by a tzibur. The mechaber says we're more makel by the tzibur. The tzibur, if the tzibur was makabel tainus and the tefillos were already answered, the tzibur could stop fasting. Why is that? One reason that we saw is leiv bezdin masne. Another reason that we saw is ein matrichen al tzibur. Another possible answer is that there's a halacha by a tzibur that when a tzibur undertakes a tainus and then their tefillos are answered, they have to say Hallel. Now Hallel you can only say mitach simcha. So therefore we're makel on the tzibur if the tefillos were answered, and we let them eat so that they should be able to say Hallel mitach simcha. Now, if the reason that they don't want to fast anymore is not because the tefillos were answered, it's because never the tefillos were not answered and the chayla died, then they're not going to say Hallel. So if you're not going to say Hallel, there's no reason for you to eat. So then you should even the tzibur should be mekayim all of the tanesim. Okay. The mechaber said the tzibur, if the tzibur is fasting and their tefillos were answered before chatzos, then they don't have to fast anymore. What's the significance of chatzos? Says the Mishnah Berurah, "Da'adayin lo hischal tainus." If it's not chatzos yet, then it doesn't really count so much as a tainus yet. Da'ad chatzos man sudahi adayin, because there are some people who don't get around to eating until chatzos. So if it's not even chatzos yet, we could look at it, we could say that you didn't really start the tainus yet. If you didn't really start the tainus yet, then you don't have to be mekayim the tainus. Masha'en ke alacha chatzos. Siv Beis, says the mechaber, Yachid shemesana al tzara, an individual who's fasting because of a tzara, v'noida, and he finds out, shekoidem kabbalas ha-tainus, kfar avra, a person was makabel tainus Monday afternoon by mincha, that he's going to fast on Tuesday because he knows that he's a loved one that's sick. He starts fasting on Tuesday, and then Tuesday morning he gets a phone call from his relative overseas. Oh, he was already better before you were even makabel tainus. He got better Monday morning. You were makabel tainus Monday afternoon. He was already better Monday morning. So now your whole kabbal's tainus was a toyus. So in that case, says the mechaber, if you find out that the tzara already went away before you were even makabel tainus, then ain't tzarich lahashlim. Then you don't have to complete the tainus. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Yachid. Ice cut and base. You find out that the tzara went away even before the kabbalah satainus. The nimtza shahisa kabbalah b'taz. So now it comes out that the whole kabbalah satainus was a mistake. Avalim over achar kabbalah satainus. But if the tzara went away after the kabbalah satainus, avshalei hischal adayin lehisanois, even though you didn't start fasting yet, tzarich lahashlim, you do have to complete the fast. Ice cotton. Oh no! Now we go to the Ramah. Says the Ramah here at the end of Siman Tov Samach Tes. V'hu hadin achar chatzos shekibla tainus b'tois ein tzricha lahashlim. When we say over here that you don't have to complete the tainus if the kabbalah tainus was b'tois, if the tzar went away already before you even were makabel the tainus, says the Ramah, this applies to the tzibur also. Let's say the tzibur made a kabbalah tainus so that the gadol should have a refuah, and they started fasting, and they fasted even until after chatzos, so they already started fasting. Now they find out that the whole thing was a mistake. The gadol wasn't even sick, so there's a kabbalah tainus b'tos, and they could stop fasting right away. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ice cut and ches, ach chatzos, v'tzayin aloymar, afilu la'ach chatzos, over reva yom tainus, afilu hachi lo yashlimu v'choshki kan chatzos. Eis Katan Tes, Ein Tzrich Lahashlim, Ubazeh, Ein Shaykh Latam Chacham, V'roi Tzibah Lahachmir. Over here, in the case of the Ramah, where the whole Kabbalah Satanis was a mistake, then we wouldn't say the caveat of the Mechaber in Sif Aleph, where he said that even though you don't have to fast, if Roiv of the Tzibur and the Talmidei Chachamim are fasting, then you should fast together with them. That halacha doesn't apply when the whole Kabbalah Satanis was betos. Okay, I thought we would get a little bit faster, but we did cover some ground, so we're going to stop over here. And Mir Hashem, tomorrow we will pick up with Siman Tuf Kuf Ayin. It's good to be back. The Rebbe should send Yeshuas and Refuas and Parnasa to all those in need. Special tefillah for Shlomo Zalman ben Mesha should have a Refuah Shalema. Menachem Ari Bedini Yehudis and Yisrael Tzvi ben Ruchama Edel Roiza should all have a Refuah Shalema with Sark Shar Chayli Yisrael. Be well.